Hey everyone, how's it going? This is Azren here, owner of the Calgary Language Nerds, and welcome to today's YouTube video and, of course, podcast episode. Today I want to talk about how I learned Spanish. I started learning Spanish when I was 15 years old, maybe 16 actually, 15 or 16, one of the two. I remember specifically when and why and how I started to learn because I wanted to learn in high school by taking a high school Spanish class. My friends were taking it. I thought I liked languages. I thought it would be fun, but I couldn't take the Spanish class because I was going on a French exchange trip. I was going to be studying in France. So when I was in France, I started to teach myself Spanish. I would use websites. I don't think I was using very effective methods. I would just go to websites and try to pick up Spanish by reading the lessons. I didn't do anything audio based. I didn't know what the language should sound like. I would just guess. So I would read it and guess what I think Spanish should sound like, essentially. And I would try to teach myself the basics. I wish I remember exactly what websites I used and what methodology I used because I don't. I don't think it was necessarily very effective, but I was using something to teach myself some Spanish. And when I came back from that trip in France, my friends were taking the second level of Spanish in high school. I technically should have been taking the first level of Spanish in high school because I hadn't taken it, but I was too embarrassed to do that. I didn't want to be the older person in the class in the 11th grade taking a 10th grade class. And so I decided to try and challenge. I talked to the teacher and I said, hey, look, I want to challenge the 10th grade class. There we go. Challenge that class so I can jump immediately to the 11th grade class. The teacher said yes. I took the test, somehow passed it. I don't know how. Took the 11th grade class with my friend. So 11th and 12th grade, that was my first, I guess, formal introduction to Spanish. I went to university. I did a double major, language and literature degree with a double major in French and Spanish. So that was a big piece of how I learned Spanish. In fact, when I was doing my degree, I probably spoke, read, and wrote and listened to as much French and Spanish every day as I did English. So even though I was living in Canada, half my day was in French and Spanish, and only half my day was in English, something like that, roughly speaking. Also, for Spanish, especially in my third and fourth year, my classmates in university were mostly native speakers because the stuff we were studying at third and fourth year, it wasn't teaching us Spanish. We'd read novels and do literature reviews and write essays. It was something that native speakers would be interested in as well. So I would be one of the very few non-native speakers in my classes, which gave me a form of immersion here in Calgary, something like that. Although they would speak to me sometimes in English, but I was around Spanish a lot. The other thing at the university, and in fact, this is something I did for French too, not just Spanish, now that I'm thinking of it. At the university, they had what was called the French Center and the Spanish Center. These were rooms that you could go to at any point in the day and practice your French or Spanish. You could do your homework there. You could ask for homework help. You can practice conversation with the person or people who worked there. You could essentially do whatever you wanted. Sometimes there were activities. I would go to that room, Spanish Center and French Center, hours every day. Hours. Sometimes I would just go and try and talk to the person who was there. Sometimes I would sit and do my homework. Sometimes whatever. In Spanish specifically, most people that went to that room were all the masters and PhD students, and they were native Spanish speakers. They would just go there to hang out. That was their hangout space. Most Spanish learners didn't go to the room except me and a few other people. So I got lots of practice from that Spanish center. My initial influences in learning Spanish were primarily Peruvian. The lady who worked in the Spanish center was Peruvian, so I talked to her every day. I actually lived with her godfather, or godparents rather, her godparents and her, what do you call that? A goddaughter? What do you call your god sister? Her godparents' daughter, whatever that is to her. I don't know what you call that. I lived with that family in Peru for approximately a month as well. And then I spent an additional month in Peru as well, traveling, taking some classes, etc., etc. I volunteered in a school in Peru as well, in various English classes. So I spent 2 months in Peru. I lived with a Peruvian family. A lot of my practice in the early days was with someone who was Peruvian. So the early influences were very Peruvian. Although after that, it wasn't, I lost some of that Peruvian influence after the first, call it, 3 years of learning Spanish, approximately, maybe 4 at most. After that, I didn't really do anything actively to try and learn Spanish per se. I mean, I went to Chile, I had a friend there, but that was more of a touristy trip, and I learned a lot of Chilean Spanish, which is super different. I've been to Spain, I've been to Mexico, but these are more, again, touristy trips. here in Calgary, if I can find opportunities to use it with native speakers, I will. I will use it with my students, of course. I don't really watch a lot of TV or nothing like that in Spanish, so mostly nowadays I don't do a lot to maintain it. I just use it with students and sometimes with people that I know. And so yeah, that's how I've learned Spanish. Thank you for watching this. If you have any questions, comments, whatever it is, feel free to let me know in the comment section or by going to azrenthelanguagenerd.com/contact. That's AZ or ZREN, thelanguagenerd.com/contact. See you guys.